In the 1920s, young women across America were paid to paint watch dials with a substance that glowed in the dark. The job was so glamorous that after work, the girls would walk home shining. Their dresses glowed, their hair glowed. Some painted their teeth so their smiles would light up at night. But the glow was radium, and every day they were told to put it in their mouths. The company called the paint harmless. The doctors called the symptoms mysterious. But years later, when investigators examined the women's bones, the bones were still glowing. This is the story of the Radium Girls, the women who painted time with death. The story begins before the women ever entered the factories. At the start of the 20th century, radium was not feared, it was worshipped. It had only recently been discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie. And to the public, it seemed impossible. It gave off energy without fire. It glowed in the dark. It appeared to heal certain cancers. It looked like science had discovered a tiny piece of magic. So companies did what companies always do. When the public falls in love with something, they sold it. Radium appeared in health tonics, cosmetics, toothpaste, face creams, bath products. It was marketed as a cure for exhaustion, a cure for aging, a cure for weakness. People drank it, rubbed it into their skin, brushed it onto their teeth. Radium was not seen as poison, it was seen as progress. And then came the war. When the United States entered World War I, soldiers needed instruments they could read in the dark: watches, compasses, aircraft dials. A glowing dial could save a soldier's life. It meant he could check the time in a trench, read an instrument in a dark cockpit, or navigate without lighting a match. So factories began hiring young women to paint the tiny numbers by hand. The work required patience, sharp eyes, steady fingers, and the women were perfect for it. At the United States Radium Corporation factory in Orange, New Jersey, hundreds of young women sat at long tables, surrounded by trays of watch faces, small pots of luminous paint, and brushes so fine they could paint numbers smaller than a fingernail. The paint had a name: Undark. It was made with radium salts and zinc sulfide. The zinc helped create the glow. The radium made that glow last. To the women, the paint looked beautiful. A pale green shimmer, soft, ghostly, alive. The factory itself seemed enchanted. Dust floated in the air. Brushes glowed. Workbenches glowed. The girls' clothes glowed. When they walked home at night, people could see them shining. That is why some people called them the Ghost Girls. But the job had one rule, a rule that would destroy them. The watch dials were tiny. The numbers had to be exact. If the brush became too wide, the paint would smear. So the women were taught a technique: dip, lip, paint. Dip the brush into the radium paint. Put the brush between your lips and pull it to a fine point. Then paint the dial. Dip, lip, paint. Hundreds of times a day. Some women did it thousands of times a week. They asked if it was safe. They were told not to worry. They were told the paint was harmless. Some were even told radium was good for them. And why wouldn't they believe it? Doctors used radium. Advertisements praised radium. Companies sold radium as health. And the girls were not hiding from danger. They were sitting in bright factories, doing one of the most modern jobs in America. But there was one detail they did not know. The scientists and managers who worked with radium often used protection: screens, tongs, lab precautions. They knew radium was not completely innocent, but the dial painters, the young women putting it directly into their mouths, were given no protection at all. Just a brush, a pot of glowing paint, and a lie. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The girls made good money. They laughed during shifts. They wore their best dresses to work. They decorated themselves with the glowing paint. Sometimes they painted their nails, sometimes their teeth. Imagine it. A group of young women stepping into a dark room and smiling, their teeth glowing like little moons. But inside their bodies, the radium was already moving. And this is what made radium so terrifying. The body mistakes radium for calcium. So when the women swallowed it, their bodies did not flush it away. Their bodies stored it in their bones, in their jaws, in their teeth, in the structure that held them upright. The glow had entered them, and it would not leave. The first signs were easy to ignore: a toothache, a sore jaw, a strange tiredness, pain in the hips, pain in the legs, pain that moved through the body without explanation. The women were young. Some were still teenagers. They should have been healthy. But one by one, they began to fall apart. One of the first was Amelia Magia. Her friends called her Molly. Her problem seemed ordinary at first, a bad tooth. So she went to the dentist. The dentist removed it, but the wound did not heal. Then another tooth hurt, then another. More teeth were removed. Still, the pain spread. Her gums became infected. Her jaw became fragile. Her body weakened. Then something horrifying happened. A dentist touched Molly's jaw, and part of it came away. Not a tooth, not a small fragment, a piece of her jawbone. The bone itself had become so damaged that it was breaking apart inside her face. In 1922, Molly died. She was only 24. Her death certificate did not blame radium. It blamed syphilis. In the 1920s, that diagnosis didn't just describe a disease. It described a woman's character. It made her family easier to dismiss. It made the company harder to blame. It turned Molly's suffering into shame. And most importantly, it protected the factory. Because if Molly had died from something immoral, then the company was innocent. But Molly was not the only one. More women became sick. Their teeth loosened, their jaws ached, their bones fractured. Some developed anemia, some developed tumors. Some became so weak they could barely walk. The women went to doctors, and the doctors were baffled. They had never seen anything like it. These were not women from filthy slums. They were not starving. They were not elderly. They were young workers from respectable homes who had all done the same job in the same factories with the same glowing paint. And still, the company denied everything. They said radium was safe. They said the women's illnesses had other causes. They suggested poor hygiene, bad health, personal weakness, sexual disease, anything but the truth. Because the truth was expensive. The truth meant the miracle product was killing the girls who made it. Then came Grace Fryer. Grace had worked at the orange factory. Like the others, she had used the brush technique: dip, lip, paint. Years later, her body began to fail. Her spine weakened. Her jaw deteriorated. She lived with pain that would have broken most people. But Grace did something the company did not expect. She fought back, not just for herself, but for the other women. The problem was, almost no lawyer wanted the case. Taking on a powerful corporation was dangerous. The science was complicated. The women were poor. The company had money. And time was not on the women's side. Because while lawyers hesitated, the Radium Girls were dying. Eventually, Grace and 4 other women brought a lawsuit against the United States Radium Corporation. They became known as the 5 Doomed Women: Grace Fryer, Edna Hussman, Catherine Schaub, Quinta McDonald, Albina Larisse. Quinta and Albina were sisters. They had worked side by side at the orange factory. They would die within years of each other. By the time the case moved forward, some of them were too sick to raise their hands in court. Their bones were breaking. Their bodies were glowing from the inside. And the company still tried to delay. Delay was a strategy. Because every month that passed, the women became weaker. Every hearing postponed brought them closer to death. But then the story reached the newspapers, and the public finally saw them. Not as factory girls, not as statistics, but as young women whose lives had been stolen by a glowing lie. What I'm about to tell you next is how their own bones became the evidence. If you appreciate these deep dives into the forgotten history that shaped our world, take a second to hit subscribe. It helps bring more of these stories to light. The breakthrough came from science. A medical examiner named Dr. Harrison Martland began investigating the deaths. He realized the women were not suffering from ordinary disease. They were suffering from radiation poisoning. Radium had entered their bodies, and because the body treated it like calcium, it had settled into their bones. From there, it fired radiation into them constantly, day after day, year after year. The poison was not passing through, it was living inside them. The women had become radioactive, and the proof was almost unbelievable. When investigators examined the remains of some dead dial painters, their bones exposed photographic plates, like tiny stars printed in the dark. Even after death, the radium was still active. Their skeletons were still giving off energy, still glowing, still testifying. That was the horror of radium. It did not kill quickly. It waited. It hid inside the body. It turned the skeleton into a source of its own destruction. The company could no longer pretend nothing was happening, but it still resisted. The women were examined, questioned, doubted. Their suffering was treated like a business problem, not a human tragedy. Then in 1928, the case was settled. The women received compensation. Medical costs were covered. A small annual payment was promised. But for many of them, justice came too late. They had not won their health back. They had not won their youth back. What they won was recognition. The world finally had to admit that radium had killed them. And that mattered, because their case helped change American labor history. It proved that companies could be held responsible for poisoning their workers. It helped shape occupational safety standards. It forced new protections for people handling radioactive materials. The Radium Girls did not just expose a company, they exposed an entire belief system. The idea that if a product was profitable and modern and wrapped in scientific language, then it must be safe. They proved that progress without protection can become a machine for killing the people who build it. But the story did not end in New Jersey. In Ottawa, Illinois, another group of dial painters suffered the same fate. They worked for the Radium Dial Company. They were also told the work was safe. They also used their lips to point the brushes. And they also began to die. One of them was Catherine Donahue. Over time, radium destroyed her body. She lost weight. Her bones weakened. Her body became fragile. By the time she testified, she was so ill that she had to give evidence from her bed. Her voice was faint. Her body was failing. But she still spoke, and that testimony mattered. Catherine Donahue died in 1938. But by then, the lie was collapsing. The glowing paint that had once seemed magical was now a symbol of industrial cruelty. The miracle had become evidence. There is something especially cruel about the Radium Girls' story. It was not only that they were poisoned, it was that they were mocked for becoming sick. They were told they were imagining it. They were told the substance they had swallowed every day could not possibly be the cause. And the world believed the companies for far too long, because the companies had experts. The companies had money. The companies had reputation. The girls had pain. And pain is easy to ignore. When ignoring it is profitable. But their bodies refused to stay silent. Their teeth fell out. Their bones fractured. Their jaws decayed. Their remains stayed radioactive. The evidence was written into them, literally into the bone. Today, radium is no longer treated like a harmless miracle. Workers handling dangerous materials have protections that did not exist for the dial painters. Warning labels exist. Exposure limits exist. workplace safety laws exist. But those protections did not appear because companies suddenly became kind. They appeared because people were harmed badly enough and publicly enough that the law was forced to change. That is the hidden legacy of the Radium Girls. They were not scientists. They were not politicians. They were not wealthy reformers. They were teenage girls and young women, sitting at factory tables, painting time onto watches, one glowing number at a time. They were told the work was safe. They trusted the people who paid them, and for that trust, they paid with their teeth, their jaws, their bones, their lives. There is one final detail that makes this story almost impossible to forget. Radium has a half-life of around 1,600 years. That means the radium inside those women did not stop when they died. It did not stop when they were buried. For generations after their deaths, their bones remained radioactive. The glow that made them famous became the thing that outlived them. A beautiful light that should never have been inside a human body. So the next time you see something glow in the dark, remember the girls who made time visible. Remember the brushes they were told to place between their lips. And remember that one of the most dangerous jobs in America once looked clean, respectable, modern, even beautiful. The most dangerous thing in history was not always a weapon. Sometimes it was a brush, a pot of paint, a job that looked safe. The job made them glow. Then it made them disappear. And if you want to see what other ordinary things used to kill people, subscribe, because the next one is going to surprise you.